Time to check in with Tom MULCAIR, our feature brought to you, of course, by the folks at Guaranteed Industries, reminding you their Lennox heat pump promotion, the fall promotion, is on right now, so save yourself some money before the weather turns too cold. 514-342-3400 or online, guaranteedindustries.com. So, Tom, I want to start off with this story that seems to be getting more and more traction through the course of the day, and that is over Sophie Brochu, the head of Hydro-Quebec, saying that she is not ruling out leaving the company if François Legault decides to appoint Pierre Fitzgibbon, not only to his old job, but to the new job of heading up Hydro, something he apparently wants. What do you make of this?
Yep, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. She already gave a hint about that on French radio a couple of mornings ago. Here's what's happening. Hydro-Quebec, of course, is an independent, what we would used to call a crown corporation. Of course, it's a government agency. It's spun off by legislation of the National Assembly, but it's wholly independent. It has its own board of directors. Anybody who's worked with Pierre Fitzgibbon will tell you the same thing. This guy thinks that the ministry he's running is his own privately owned depanneur. I mean, he just runs everything as if he calls all the shots. Normal rules don't apply to him. It should be borne in mind that he is the guy who broke the ethics laws several times. That's not a matter of opinion. That was the determination of the ethics commissioner. He ignored her rulings, as did Legault. Legault finally had to kick him out of cabinet for a few months and then let him back in. Now he's showing his real stripes. He wants to be in charge of Hydro-Quebec. Sophie Brochu, probably the best person we've had in that job in decades, is making it very clear that if they think that they're going to tell her how to do the job that legislation, the law, asks her to do, she's going to walk away from it. This is pure Legault, it's pure Fitzgibbon, and it's the pure misogyny that we've seen from them since the beginning. Every time it has to do with women, how could a woman possibly run Hydro-Quebec? We'll put in Fitzgibbon. He'll be in charge of that too.
I'm sorry, Tom, but just to go back to this, now you're seeing backlash. And by the way, I should let you know, we asked for comment from Hydro-Quebec on this. Here's what they wrote us back for Sophie Brochu. Unfortunately, she is not available for interviews, but she wants to remind everyone that Hydro-Quebec and the government share the same destination, decarbonizing and creating wealth in Quebec, unquote.
Right. Lovely.
Doesn't look like she wants to start a fight, though, does it?
She's not looking to start a fight. Legault wants to start a fight with her and let her know that he's the boss of Hydro-Quebec and that he's going to put in his minister, Fitzgibbon, who's going to be in charge of everything, including energy, which would include Hydro-Quebec, and make the determination on everything from what company should be brought in and what block of electricity should be made available to that company that Fitzgibbon wants to make a deal with. We've always talked about this, that Legault represents a return to the Duplessis era. Mm-hmm. Remember when Duplessis removed infamously the liquor license of a restaurant owner named Frank Roncarelli? He said, well, it's because the Attorney General removed the license. But guess who the Attorney General was? It was Duplessis. Uh-huh. He was also the Premier. So This is the world that we're going to live in with François Legault. Lots of us who have been observing the guy for a long time have warned that's his bottom tendency. This is the way he operates. Forget about the rules, forget about the laws. He's going to be the boss in charge of everything, and this is how he wants to bring in Fitzgibbon to this role.
But he also doesn't like to look bad. And at this stage of the game, Sophie Brochu, by saying she's willing to step away, is making him look bad. So will Legault potentially back off, or you think he'll double down?
She'll make him look bad for 48 hours, and then the press will move on to something else. But it'll stay a little bit in people's minds that a woman who had already run, she ran Gaz Metropolitain. Today it's got a different name, Energear or something like that. But, she ran a huge company, and she's very, very good at it. And she's a progressive, and yes, she understands the importance of Hydro-Quebec. It's green, renewable energy, something that we should be super proud of, and that can be very attractive to investors looking to do manufacturing, for example, and be able to boast, that their bottom line in terms of energy is very green. We've got an incredible asset in Hydro-Quebec. Unfortunately, like everything else they touch, they're probably going to ruin the basic principle of Hydro-Quebec, which is it's an independently run corporation. Yes, it's publicly owned, but it's still independently run.
To Natasha's point, though, Tom, it would be a way for perhaps François Legault to score some real points outside of his own party or his own people by simply saying he's seen the reaction to this and Pierre Fitzgibbon has enough to do and he'll let Sophie Brochu run Hydro-Quebec because she is doing such a good job.
Look, I saw my first inkling of this during the campaign. Legault announces out of nowhere that he wants to harness another river. Doesn't even say which one. Just, this is what we do. Think of La Grande, think of La Romaine, of all the big rivers that they've, put dams on. She, of course, wasn't consulted on this. She sent out something quite cryptic, saying, we work with the government and we'll look at this together, something along those lines. As soon as I saw that, I knew that there was a fight brewing, but she was smart enough not to stick her nose into an election campaign. Well, now the campaign's over, and if Legault thinks that he's going to shove Pierre Fitzgibbon down Hydro-Quebec's throat, he's in for a surprise.
Okay, fair enough. Can we talk about, speaking of the environment and greening and everything else? Wow, it appears Francois Legault has a great idea about taxing polluting cars. I can't imagine where that would have come from. Tom, you?
An absolute knee slapper. And of course, they're going to try to say, well, this is just, preliminary. This is, people sitting around a table just trying to decide. No. This was a call for tenders. This is not four bureaucrats sitting in a windowless room. This has been thought through. They put this to paper. They were calling for tenders for people to come up with plans to tax the electricity you use when you're charging your electric vehicle. That was a real good one, from the guy who said he wanted to lower taxes. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the other one was to go straight to the what he was deriding as the orange tax. Yeah. Of course, it's the lemon tax in the case of Legault. So it's not exactly the same thing.
Can you remind us again about those orange tax flyers that were on everybody's car?
That came from a certain Francois Legault's CAC. Yeah. And it was his way of deriding the idea of taxing people when they bought their cars because they're already taxed enough. Yeah. Oh, but wait, now that the election's over, let's look at that again.
Yeah, so a yellow tax instead of an orange tax, a much more amenable color, I think. Yeah,
exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
From that, I want to know, look, we've talked about Stephen Guilbeault in the past, and it's interesting because I think everyone really appreciated the work he was doing when he worked in the private sector. Mm-hmm. Now he's the environment minister. He seemed to have stepped in a whole lot of holes ever since he took that portfolio. And now, kind of an odd thing to say, suggesting that people in communities that are prone to natural disasters should perhaps just consider moving. Mm-hmm. Where's the government action other than saying, you know what, maybe you should just leave?
There are two main things that you have to do with regard to climate change. One is called mitigation, meaning you have to decrease the quantity of greenhouse gases you emit because those greenhouse gases are producing the greenhouse effect. The global warming is coming from that. The other thing that you have to do is realize that what's already in the pipeline, even if we didn't burn another ton of coal, is already going to warm the planet, is already going to provoke a lot of changes. So that's called adaptation. Lower North Shore of Quebec, the St. Lawrence, have to move that road back a couple of kilometers because it's going to fall into the St. Lawrence. There's so much erosion going on, all predicted, all modeled. It's the same thing. But Stephen Guilbeault should not be making that sort of statement because it shows a total lack of empathy and understanding. Yeah. And it shows that he's throwing in the towel on the fight against climate change, which, of course, he doesn't want anybody to believe. Now, to try to find something good to say about Stephen Guilbeault, on the front page of today's Gazette, there's talk of the creation of a big federally sponsored urban park on the lands that are around Dorval Airport, and I think that that's something that should be applauded. I sit on the, full disclosure, I sit on the community council that exists at Aéroport de Montréal, and there was a big dust-up over the summer about the destruction of the milkweed plants that were, of course, necessary for the monarch butterflies, which is an endangered species that passes a lot through Montreal. So I think that if Guilbeault gets that one, he gets a big bouquet. But for his other statement, oh yeah, you might as well just move. I think he deserves a brick back.
It's kind of so heartless, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, those Maritimers. Imagine they've just lost their homes, so many of them, and being told, well, never mind, just move. I mean, it's just so not acceptable.
But he is very clumsy in his public statements, and he's got all the money in the world. He does certain things like Trudeau's announcement this week in Sorel-Tracy around Quebec Iron and Titanium. Great announcement, by the way. Massive polluting company, big contribution of federal funds to get this company to net zero. This is a huge announcement. It was really good, but it was totally underplayed. It was swamped by a bunch of other stuff. But this is the good stuff that Guilbeault is trying to do. But when he says something that is so boneheaded like this, that people just, say, well, why are you even doing that job? If this is your understanding of how important this is for people.
Tom, I want to thank you for the time. You have yourself a good weekend.
Hey, you guys too. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Tom.